Why is being born a street boy so bad? Ever wondered how a pint-sized human with a head full of dreams and a heart full of mischief transforms into the urban legend? The street-dwelling myth, the one and only Boy Street? It starts with a scream, a slap, and a whole lot of questions about whether you were actually planned. Welcome to the cinematic odyssey of a kid who traded his future for a piece of sharpened steel and a motorized bicycle. Only to find out that the road has a very funny way of bringing you right back to where you started. Usually with a few more scars and a much louder realization of what actually matters. This is the ultimate guide to the rise, the crash, and the very quiet rebirth of a teenage storm. You slid into this world small, pink, and screaming your lungs out like you were already protesting the tax bracket you were born into. Your parents were barely out of their own childhoods, looking at you with a mix of unconditional love and, oh man, what have we done? Most people in the neighborhood assumed you were a beautiful accident, a glitch in the matrix of a northern Vietnamese province. But hey, an accident with a cute face is still a win, right? You grew up in the cozy chaos of a mom-and-pop grocery store. Your mother was the queen of canned goods and instant noodles, ensuring you never lacked a single snack or warm bed. Your father, on the other hand, was a man of simple, liquid interests. He possessed a belly that could be classified as a weapon of mass destruction. Fueled entirely by an Olympic-level dedication to beer. If there was a gold medal for sitting on a plastic stool and contemplating the bottom of a glass, he was your undisputed champion. To the world, you were a toddler. To your family and the grumpy uncle next door, you were a tiny, high-decibel terrorist who weaponized tantrums the way a commando weapon uses a knife. Childhood was a blur of improvised weaponry. Give a normal kid a bamboo stick, and they see a cane. Give it to a future Boy Street, and it's an Excalibur of domestic destruction. You whacked everything in sight until the fateful day your aim failed you and you connected squarely with the back of your father's head. That was the day you learned about the Tran Dawn, the first strike of many. It instilled a healthy, vibrating fear of the man with the beer belly, pushing you deeper into the protective, enabling embrace of your mother. As you grew, your mischief scaled up. You became the pint-sized king of the alleyway. Any kid who dared to look at you sideways or suggest that maybe, just maybe, you weren't the fastest runner in the district, found themselves at the receiving end of a very dusty brawl. Then came the institution. School. Your mom sold it like a theme park, friends, teachers, fun, but you walked in and realized it was just a glorified daycare with more rules and less nap time. It was a prison of silence where playing with toys was a federal offense and talking was treason. You spent your days mastering the art of the eyes open sleep, nodding rhythmically to the teacher's lecture while your brain was busy simulating a high-speed chase. Recess was the only time you felt alive. A chaotic symphony of kicking water bottles, playing tag like your life depended on it, and pulling the hair of girls just to see if they'd scream in a higher pitch than you. Puberty hit like a freight train fueled by hormones and bad decisions. Suddenly, the girls you used to tease looked less like annoying aliens and more like terrifying magnetic puzzles. You started noticing weird things. Hair growing in places it had no business being. You spent more time in front of the mirror than your mother did, obsessing over a chin that refused to grow a beard and a forehead that seemed to be a magnet for acne. The colorful clothes your mom used to pick out were banished to the shadow realm. Your wardrobe became a monochromatic abyss of black. Black shirts, black pants, black soul. The turning point was the music. Some older guys at school introduced you to a beat that sounded like a blender full of glass being played through a megaphone. And suddenly, everything else was garbage. You tortured your parents' eardrums with it daily. You were part of a pack now. A group of guys who spent their time in class sleeping and their time outside learning how to style their hair based on TikTok tutorials that used enough hairspray to punch a hole in the ozone layer. But a king needs a carriage. You saw a girl from the next class. Let's call her Lisa, who was so beautiful it made your brain short-circuit. You had the hair. You had the black clothes. But you lacked the steel. You needed a ride. You begged your mom. She pointed to your dad. And your dad pointed to the door. You persisted. You took the hits. You acted like the world was ending. And eventually, the parental unit buckled. They bought you an electric bike. You didn't care that it cost 3 months of their hard-earned salaries. You had wheels. You were the knight in shining plastic, ready to pick up Lisa and conquer the asphalt. Dating Lisa was your first real job. You were cautious, which in teenage terms means you were obsessed. You traded studying for chef, burning up the streets. But Lisa was high maintenance. She didn't just want your heart, she wanted lipsticks, hair clips, and a trendy backpack. When the mom bank closed its doors to your constant withdrawals, you turned to a life of crime. You waited until your mother was hanging laundry, crept into her room like a clumsy ninja, and liberated $200 from her purse. It was a rush. You felt like a mastermind, unaware that the real cost was something you couldn't pay back with cash. By now, your Boy Street skill tree was fully leveled up. You were a speed demon, never dropping below 60 kilometers per hour. A helmet? Forget about it. Why hide the masterpiece of hair that you'd spent 45 minutes sculpting into a literal horn? You mastered the via leaning into corners until your foot pegs sparked, and dreamed of the day you could pull a wheelie that would make the gods weep. The cold wind and the roar of the motor were your only home. You felt like a god, especially with Lisa clinging to your back, her hair flying, both of you defying the laws of physics and common sense. Then came the checkpoint. You saw them from a mile away, the flashing lights, the officers in the middle of the road. Most people would brake. A Boy Street accelerates. You dropped a gear, pinned the throttle, and wove through the gap like a greased lightning bolt. You thought you were home free until the siren wailed right behind you. Panic turned your blood to ice. You hit 80, weaving through a crowded intersection, dodging grandmas and delivery drivers. Then, a friend, or someone you thought was a friend, cut across the road. You swerved, lost the front end, and the world turned into a blur of gray asphalt and sparks. You weren't dead, just a bit of road rash on your pride and your backside. You scrambled up, grabbed your bike, and did the unthinkable. You fled. You left Lisa standing there, dazed and humiliated in the middle of the street. You made it home, heart hammering against your ribs like a trapped bird. You thought you'd escaped the law. You opened the gate, only to see two very familiar, very stern men standing in your yard. It turns out Lisa, fueled by a rage that only a girl abandoned at a crash site can feel, had called the cops and given them your home address. You lost everything that night. The bike, your freedom, and your first love. You vented on Facebook with 10 status updates of pure, unadulterated teenage angst. But deep down, you knew you were just a Trey Matt, a bitter-faced fool. High school was the era of the peak Boy Street. You were the biggest kid in class. Your mom's actual motorcycle was now yours. Your hair was a structural marvel of chemical stiffness. You wore TikTok-famous sandals and gentle monster-style glasses that made you look like a budget movie star. You were a Fong Bat, show-off, pro, posting photos with your bike and sliding into the DMs of 5 girls at once, hoping one would stick. Your ego was so big it needed its own zip code. You walked like you owned the pavement, whistling at girls and picking fights with anyone who dared to breathe your air. Then came the smoke. You thought cigarettes made you look like a brooding protagonist. Instead, they made your voice sound like a rusty tractor and turned your skin into a wrinkled map of bad choices. But you felt cool, sitting on the sidewalk with your crew, playing billiards and trying to mimic the trick shots you saw on social media. One day, the Big Brothers called. They said there was work to do. You didn't know what it was, but you wanted in. They handed you a Fong Lon, a long pole with a knife welded to the end. You asked if you were going to hunt pigs. They told you no, this was for respect. This was so no one would ever mess with the brotherhood again. You felt a dark, electric pride. You went home and built your own, feeling like a soldier being handed his rifle. You posted it on Facebook, the ultimate badge of dishonor. The peak was a nightmare of adrenaline. You raced through the city center, dodging traffic and causing accidents you didn't even stop for. You got a "Love Mom" tattoo on your shoulder and a dragon on your back that remained uncolored because you spent your tattoo money on gas and cigarettes. You and your crew were the primary cause of high blood pressure for every traffic cop in the province. One night, a rival gang crossed your path. An "Ow-do" red shirt guy gave you a look. That was all it took. The chase was on, engines screaming, poles flashing in the moonlight. When they got trapped in traffic and bailed, you caught one. You rained down blows, screaming about looking at you wrong, until he begged for mercy. You walked away feeling like a conqueror, unaware that you were just a bully with a stick. The end came in a dusty field. A scheduled showdown. You showed up with your army. But they showed up with more. Glass bottles flew like mortars. The fallen lawn clashed. Blood was spilled. And the sounds of sirens soon drowned out the screams. The police didn't just show up, they swept the whole group. You stood for your souvenir photo at the station. The reality finally sinking in. You looked at the camera. Then at your bruised hands. And for the first time, you felt a crushing weight of regret. You had everything, a family, a future, a home, and you threw it away for a night of looking cool. 2 years in a juvenile detention center changes a person. You came home to a world that had moved on. Your parents looked a decade older. You had a 1-year-old brother you'd never met, a second chance for your parents to get it right. You were different now. The fallen lawn was gone, replaced by a clean haircut and a job that actually contributed to the household. One evening, as you walked home from a long shift, you heard it, that familiar roar, that high-pitched scream of modified engines. You saw them, a pack of colorful-haired kids, clutching their poles, burning up the street with the same reckless, hollow pride you once had. You watched them go, a ghost of your past self. And you realized that the street doesn't love you back. It just waits for the next kid to fall. If this story hit home, or if you want to see more deep dives into the lives we led and the mistakes we make, hit that subscribe button. Support the channel so we can keep bringing you stories that matter. Stories that make you think before you rev that engine. Stay safe out there.